questioning is perhaps the greatest gift we have as human beings.
Science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking.
It's a way of thinking that teaches us to question everything we think we know.
Science came about by developing techniques, methodologies for gaining reliable knowledge about the world.
We have at our fingertips the technologies that were only possible for the largest governments and corporations 20 years ago as an individual today.
If human civilization continued at anything remotely like the current pace of technology advancement for 1 million years, where would we be? I think we're either extinct or on a lot of planets.
The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it.
We hold the scientific method in high regard because it works. If it stopped working, we'd throw it out.
Discover the past.
Create the future.
This is the Here and How podcast.
Welcome to the Here and How podcast, where every week we dive deep into big ideas to explore the past and create a brighter future together.
Could you guys hear that?
That was so weird.
What was that? Come on.
So, I actually chose for today to use a vocal avatar for my introduction because we're going to be talking about networks, or not network security, but like security in general, and the security of your identity. So the future of identity theft. It's going to be exciting. Are you guys in for a wild ride?
I'm quite intrigued now.
So I've gone to there's a website now where you can they'll put like text on the screen and you can type in or they put out like different things that they want you to say, and you say them over and over, and they gain audio samples of your voice. And the more audio samples they have, the better they can make a text to speech avatar that sounds like you. So when I played that recording back, that was literally something I had just typed out. I'd never said before, as far as this program is aware. I just typed it out and it came up with a voice recording of me. And it sounded pretty good. Like you could still tell it was like an avatar, but it wasn't bad.
It did sound like you. It just sounded like you talking through like a couple of sheets of metal or something, if that makes sense.
Distortion?
Yeah.
All right.
If you were using a potato for a microphone, that's essentially what it was.
Yeah.
So here's another one that they made up just from like different sound recordings. And can you tell who this is?
I'm Barack Obama, and I think that my digital voice is quite impressive.
Oh, come on. You can't say, can you tell who this is, and start with them saying their name. What is that?
Or how about this one?
That? Come on.
I am Donald Trump, and I think that my
fuck's
digital
sake.
voice is quite impressive. I don't know exactly.
So I forgot that they start by introducing themselves. But
Come on.
Wait, can I guess? Was that Hillary Clinton?
Yeah.
Yes!
The thing is that I don't know if I would have. If you try that again with the Donald Trump one, I'll ignore him calling himself Donald Trump and see if I get the feeling that.
I could definitely tell it was his
my digital
voice.
voice is quite impressive. I don't know exactly how they made it, but I'm really impressed.
Oh, it's slightly off. I could probably.
Yeah, it's like this whole uncanny valley kind of thing, isn't it? But with audio.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like there's something off there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to try to see if you guys can tell the difference between me and the avatar. So I'm going to play a couple and then I'm going to say a couple. And if anyone is watching on YouTube, just like look away from the screen, or maybe I'll just like hide my video input, and you have to try to distinguish me from the robot. So I'm going to say a few things and then we'll see. Steve's mother is so fat. Was that me or was that an avatar?
That was definitely the avatar.
Nah, that was you. That was painfully true as well.
That was me. Okay. What about this one? Just a friendly reminder that there is no God.
That was machine. Avatar.
Rachel?
Yeah.
That was a machine? Is that what your vote is?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was indeed a machine.
What was the first one? Was that you?
The first one was me.
Oh, no way. Damn
Okay,
it.
all right, I'm going to do another one. Isn't this kind of amazing?
Okay, that's machine.
Steve?
Yeah, I think machine.
Okay. That was indeed machine.
Woo.
You guys are doing pretty good so far. Let me try another one. Now go create something magnificent.
That was you.
The problem I'm finding here is that I feel like you've made your own voice robotic to accommodate the fact that it's not quite replicating your voice.
Well, I could put my voice through some like distortion or something, you know, just to kind of make my voice sound a little bit like kind of decrease the audio quality, but I'm just kind of like going with it. But what about this one?
Kiss my large royal buttocks.
That is the avatar. There's almost like some little it sounds like sound artifacts, if that makes sense. Like a little bit of I don't know what to call it, almost like a crackle to it, but not a crackle.
Yeah.
I'm so bad with sound.
That will get better with time. Like right now, this is like the early phases of the technology where you're able to kind of like recreate someone's vocal patterns and stuff. But I have one more for you guys.
What? You're who and me?
Was that me or machine?
I think both.
Yeah, why not? Go for both. That's amazing.
Oh, that was good. That was machine, though, right?
That was machine. I would never say something like that in real life.
Obviously.
No, never.
That's why all the other times you said it, it was a machine.
So this software has been out for a little while, and I'll put a link in the description so people can go and generate their own text-to-speech avatar. But it's a website called Lyrebird. And they're actually, the implications for something like this are kind of cool. Like they're able to use it for, let's say that someone is mute or paralyzed or something like that, but they want to be able to communicate. You can actually create their voice. So like, let's say that if someone has ALS, but they haven't necessarily become completely paralyzed yet, like with Stephen Hawking, then they would be able to record a vocal avatar beforehand and then use that and have their own voice be used when they're typing text to speech.
I like that idea a lot.
The dangers of something like this is that we could rapidly reach a point where robots could impersonate other humans and come across in such a way where it actually sounds like them. It actually, you can't tell the difference between whether you're talking to a machine or to a person. So imagine getting a sales call from someone who sounds exactly like your mom. So you open it up and, or maybe it has just the right vocal patterns where it's not quite like her, but it still, has that sense of warmth and stuff that you associate with your mother's voice. Yeah. So, or an identity theft person pretending to be your banker.
There's a series on Netflix at the minute, and I kind of didn't want to watch it because it's made by BuzzFeed. But they did an episode on this sort of stuff, and there was one of them where he used a program like this, and so he said a bunch of like stuff into it, and it came up with like an AI version of his voice. And then he phoned his mum and used the machine to talk to his mum, and his mum didn't recognize the difference. And they like made plans for later in the day without him ever actually speaking to her. Does that make sense? And it was actually pretty cool.
Wow.
So it's that you're still having to put in the text input.
Yeah.
But it is, in a sense, as far as you're familiar with the Turing Test, which was put forth by Alan Turing, the famous computer scientist, which is, a test to see if you can tell the difference between an AI and a human. Now, in this case, you would have like the human and the AI kind of on the other side of a wall, and you're just having like a conversation. It could just be through a terminal, like a text terminal. But if you have speech like this, there's a few other things that kind of set the human voice apart. And one of them is like your pauses and, the way that you communicate, like you'll have ums and uhs and certain changes in your vocal cadence. So I wanted to play another clip. This is from the Google I/O 2018. And this is a new software feature called Google Duplex. And it will actually make like software will call and make appointments for you, but it sounds very, very similar to a real human. So I'm going to play this clip for you guys real quick so you can see.
So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule the appointment for you. Let's listen.
So how can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure. What time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
I love this.
So when I first heard that, my mind was blown. I was like, they've literally gone out and made that was from an actual phone call where the assistant called a hair salon place to make an appointment for someone.
That is amazing. Well, do you know what information it was given?
I don't know what inputs it was given. I'm assuming that it had access to the client's calendar to see what time slots were available, certain information like the person's name, their sex, their, what they were wanting, what service they wanted to book. I'm not sure aside from that, but just the sheer fact that they were able to, come across sounding like a real human. You hear there's a point where there's a pause and the robot goes, I'm not sure about that. It's like when would because a computer doesn't need to pause, but humans do. Humans we naturally throw this stuff into our language to make it sound more like us. So the fact that this computer is able to learn a certain person's speech patterns and then throw that into a conversation, I thought was pretty. Or maybe I'm not sure if Duplex learned the speech patterns or if it's just the assistant has that programmed in.
It would make sense for it to be programmed,
cool.
because if you people in real life like I do, who don't use social things such as saying when someone's saying something, or there's so many and they're so intuitive that it's hard to actually recall them. We tend to call such people autistic. That actually, it's something that's seen a lot, and there's nothing wrong with it. You're more pragmatic, not making noises, but there's a social element to the humanity. Yeah, for sure.
When a person doesn't use them and when they can just say what they're thinking without pausing, I do find it a little bit jarring. And I'm like,
yeah,
wait, you're going a bit fast for me sometimes.
And it can feel robotic.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy too, though, because when I do interviews on podcasts or on YouTube and stuff, I try to refrain from doing the and the pauses and the ums and stuff, because I want whoever I'm interviewing to shine through and for them to be able to say their piece and not have these little interruptions that sometimes if my audio overpowers theirs, then whoever's listening can't hear what the person being interviewed is saying. So it's unnatural. It doesn't feel normal for me.
Yeah, here's something that's interesting. So I do it with this podcast. I often say because it's that I'm following along, etc. When I edit the audio, I cut them out because where the noise is made without much mouth movement, it doesn't actually affect the audio at all. It just means that during the conversation, like we're having now, that interaction's there, whereas in what's produced, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have since we started the podcast, I have been trying so hard not to do it. To not be yeah, when people are talking, but it's hard. And when you just get kind of relaxed and you just fall into a pattern of just talking and you forget the camera's on, they do just slip out all the time with me, and it's really tough.
Yeah, I noticed that when I'm going through and I'm editing, I'll see the kinds of different kind of I don't even know what you call those, but just the acknowledgements that we have and how they're different from me to Steve to Rachel, but we'll all do them, and then I'll go through and I'll be like, does this interrupt the audio? Does it make it hard to tell what someone's saying?
Yeah, it's
bizarre. So I wanted to kind of touch on one other aspect of impersonation that's video. There's a website, and I shared this with you guys through Facebook, but I'll put a link in the description. And for people watching on YouTube, I'm going to put the video up on screen. But you can go to the Here and How website for the show notes, and I'll have a video. But there's a real-time face capture software that's been worked on by a collaboration of researchers from several universities, including Stanford, the Technical University of Munich, University of Erlangen-Nuremberg, and the Max Planck Institute for Informatics. And what they do is they'll take a clip of someone from YouTube, like Donald Trump or George Bush or Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they'll put their face on screen, but they have motion capture, but it's not like the little motion capture that you'll see at like Hollywood. It's literally just a webcam trained on their face, and it's tracking things like their eye movements, their mouth movements, and they'll be able to impose that onto the video in real time. So you'll see Donald Trump is like sitting there moving his head back and forth, just having a regular conversation and like an interview, but then he's doing like the facial reactions and the motions that this person is doing on the webcam. So this person will sit in front of their computer and they'll make their eyebrows move up and down and make their mouth do like a funny face. And you'll see Donald Trump or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or whoever is mimicking their facial features. So they have software that lets you create fake video where, we're all used to Photoshop. We're all used to being able to make photos of people that look fake, but now they're able to do it with video. So it's kind of scary, the implications of being able to take someone's face and impersonate them and make them say ridiculous things and take their voice and impose that in there as well.
This could be very bad.
Yeah. Have you heard about the I think they call it like deep fakes or something, and Philip DeFranco covered it like a while back, and basically there was an issue where, I say issue, but people were taking like video of actresses and YouTubers and stuff like that and using like kind of software and stuff. They were managing to like superimpose their faces onto clips of porn.
Yeah.
So it made it look like the celebrities were in these porn videos. And like, as a woman who does stuff online, that's kind of terrifying for me that people could do that.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, that is.
It scares me, and I feel like it's along the same sort of lines.
Yeah, we're already getting to the point where with After Effects, people can create video footage of like aliens and different things that are like coming and visiting us. But now, like, if you can actually recreate someone's face, and make them say and do whatever you want and have whatever facial reactions you want, like you can start seeing how this can be kind of scary, and it can be something that could potentially be dangerous. So we're getting into a realm where, it's on the one hand, there are some cool possible applications for it. So for example, if you're a lecturer or an educator and you're giving the same speech again and again at hundreds of different venues, if instead you could teleconference in and you have your same responses that you give to these questions over and over, you could have a live avatar version of you that is acting kind of like a coach, a one-on-one personal trainer or coach. Like you could get someone like Arnold teaching you how to lift weights. You could get someone like Steve Wozniak teaching you how to program. You could get the best of the best and really have like, fine-tuned master classes with the world's top elite experts in different areas.
I'm not quite following. Why do we not already have that if they was to teach it via some online video?
It's not
course?
Interactive.
So it's the interactivity, being able to talk to them is the interesting part.
So if you have questions and stuff.
Yeah, but when you ask someone, if you was to ask that person who was duplicating or replicating Donald Trump's face a question, the answer's coming from him. It just looks like it's coming from Donald Trump.
Well, no, this would be, you would take this technology and you would layer it on top of essentially what would be a digital copy of yourself. So not 100%, but you already have software right now that is taking, I think like Google and I want to say like Baidu and Amazon and several others have been working on technology too that will take and I might be off on this, but I'm pretty sure that they can take clips of things that you say and come up with like the most logical answer to questions based off of a stream of like videos and stuff that you have input. So I don't know if this is something that's currently available or something that's in the works. I know that we've talked a little bit about digital avatars in the past and saving different responses. But it's something that definitely down the road in the future we're likely to see happen, where you can store kind of a digital copy of yourself on the internet just based off of all your interactions with people, the types of responses that you give, the types of answers that you give. And then you could have kind of an online coach that anyone could tap into and ask questions. So like there are kind of potential upsides and positives for something like this. But at the same time, like you can kind of see the security implications. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about like how can.
Sorry, man. I just wanted to stop you just because I totally get what you're saying, but I want to kind of just quickly go back a little bit to what frustrates me about this technology, and something that I think's sad, is that when the internet came about, when photography came about, when technology was advancing, it liberated us from superstition, from knowing what's false, etc. So all of a sudden, all information was accessible, with Wikipedia. And this is a dramatic change in culture, in humanity as a whole. And as soon as the camera was created, all of a sudden assertions of miracles died. But then Photoshop came along, and all of a sudden they start coming back. The same is going to happen with video, with these kinds of abilities that technology is giving us, as what I would say is relatively recently, with the information on the internet being what it is. People publish whatever crap they want, and they can make it look like a journal, or they can even create a journal, and people buy into it. So I'm kind of worried, because the very technology, the very thing that gave us this liberation, this access to truth, may play a big part in robbing it from us.
That's why we need more people like, have you seen Captain Disillusion and his videos?
Yeah, fantastic.
He's amazing for like properly debunking, all that kind of stuff. I think we need kind of more education in those areas, so people don't just believe everything they see or believe everything they read online.
But this is it. Like, someone could do a version where they are assuming Captain Disillusion's identity and saying that something's real. I think it's going to have to get to this standard where certain documentaries or certain things that we're viewing will have to have a stamp saying that this is genuine people.
And that's kind of what we have right now with YouTube. So like someone can go on YouTube and create like an avatar of me and put out videos and stuff, but they cannot log into my YouTube account and do it under my name. So like the fact that you're subscribed to my channel, which one is me, you can get verified on Twitter or Facebook or something and get that little check mark and say it's like, oh, hey, this is actually you. You can verify your website. So if I go to my website, I can, if I want to connect that to Google, I have to verify that it's my website by pasting little bits of code or something in my website so that Google Analytics or whatever knows that that's a property that I actually own. So like there's little things that you can do to kind of show that you are the owner of these properties and give these social media platforms the information that they need to verify you and to show that you're real. So
that's true.
There's things like that you can do to kind of show, like I can't impersonate Captain Disillusion because I don't have his Twitter credentials. I don't have his YouTube credentials. Those are things that you can have to.
I don't agree with that. I think you can. So you could impersonate him on the street, like someone's come up to him to ask him, "Are you religious?" And he could say, "Yes, I believe in Allah." Whereas he didn't say that. He wouldn't say that. It doesn't have to. I agree with what you're saying, that when you have a YouTube channel, it's very hard to impersonate them in that very specific sphere. But when we're talking politicians, with this technology, I won't be able to tell. I don't think anyone will really be able to tell the difference between Donald Trump saying something insane and someone pretending to be Donald Trump saying something insane.
It doesn't change the things that can damage your reputation as well. So it's like what we were talking earlier about the whole stuff with the porn. Yeah. If someone wanted to do that for me or you or whatever, and then publish like fake photographs or videos that look real, like they're out there, and basically it's just my word against theirs or your word against theirs. Like, unless there's a way to prove that they're fake.
And the porn thing's even a really good example, because the people that would watch that, don't care whether or not you did it or not. They got what they wanted from it. And the same is true of media outlets. When
and that would feel so violating.
Of course, yeah. And when media outlets like say they already do this. They already do this with. So Trump, I'm not a big fan of, but the amount of times I've seen media misrepresenting what he's saying, I just want to scream at them. Don't do that. Take what he actually says, and you'll win this battle. Don't go over the top. If they're doing it for that, for clickbait, for views, they'd absolutely exploit this technology, and it's just. Oh, it's potentially devastating.
Well,
like we're going to live in a world where we don't know what's real anymore.
Yeah, this is where it becomes so important to have actual journalists and actual journalistic integrity, because what we're seeing is the rise of these media sources that, sites like BuzzFeed, that they're 100% put out for clickbait. And because they're getting so many views and they're stealing attention from actual news sources like, the New York Times or, I don't care if, you're liberal or conservative, Fox News and MSNBC or whatever, like they did have journalistic standards for, how to check a story, how to double check and how to do your research and stuff. Whether or not they did it 100% of the time, like I'm not going to go into, but like you don't have that at all with blogs. You don't have that at all with, things like Salon or Gizmodo or TechCrunch or something that like they're putting out massive amounts of news. And sometimes it can be extremely devastating to certain, public figures, to certain businesses and something. And you can see how people can manipulate the media.
You look at Sam Harris.
Fake stories.
If we just take Sam Harris, for example, the amount of media outlets that have published things that are just not true, they've taken words out of context, etc. Or you take Jordan Peterson, I'm not a big fan of Jordan Peterson, but the amount of times he's been misrepresented by the media is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious, and it does real damage to these people most of the time. Arguably, it elevated Jordan Peterson, but it did real damage to Sam Harris, and he had to defend himself, having to say, "I wasn't saying that blacks are not as smart as whites. I was saying X, Y, Z," and he shouldn't have to do this, but that's just the way these things work. With those,
but we're reaching an era where fact-checking sites are becoming more and more important. And the need for fact-checking sites and the need for, even something like Wikipedia, I know is like subject to be edited, but at the same time, like people do put up, like oftentimes I'll find different sources quoted on Wikipedia that will debunk or that will fact-check something. And will say like, here's the controversy, here's the scandal, here's what really happened. And you can go through and you can click through to more reliable sources. But as far as actually knowing the truth, I think that there's a couple things is one, like finding where is it coming from? What is the source? Is it a reliable news source? Is it just somebody's blog that has an agenda? What are their motives for publishing it? It kind of gets back to the Carl Sagan baloney detection kit, but with a certain layer of like, you also have to be able to spot a photoshopped image and to be able to do some photo forensics or to ask an expert, ask someone, try to find out, has an expert gone and debunked this already? What was the original source? Where else is it on the internet?
Do you think these skills are something we need to be teaching in schools now?
I think it's extremely important to be able to teach not just how to learn, but how to think critically and how to fact check and how to find, actual accurate information online. And it's becoming increasingly difficult, but it's more and more becoming important.
It's just this kind of like made me think, because all of these things that you're speaking about are what we were taught to do in history, especially at GCSE, like when we were evaluating our sources there. And so, it was, I don't know if you did GCSE history, Steve, but we had like a whole big chunk of the exam dedicated to evaluating a source and evaluating how good and how accurate and how reliable a source was. And it's almost like bizarre to me that this was something we were taught to do for like old, hundreds of year old sources and reports and documents and whatever. But now it's something that we have to do more and more with like the things that we come face to face with every day, if that makes sense. And I think it's something that people don't really think about. They don't think, oh, well, I have to evaluate whether this newspaper is reliable or not. But more and more it's something we should be doing. So I don't know.
I put on top of that, because it's a great point, is that we seem to live more and more with a world where we want instant gratification. So I can notice it in my generation compared to those above, and I can certainly see it in those younger. And it takes time to look things up. It takes time to actually read things, to see what's being said, to check whether or not their references, one, come from a reputable source, and two, whether or not they actually say what the interpreter believes it's saying. And all of that takes effort, and people just they'd rather, especially with cognitive bias, they would see something that agrees with their opinion, and that could be a quote mine from someone, or it could be a video which has been basically, it's a fraudulent video. It's not actually that individual. As long as they see it, they just go, oh wow, that's now a thing, and they get on with their days, and will mention that during lunch to their co-workers or whatnot. And it's hard to know where to draw the line. Should there be a line where you say this isn't allowed, or should there be a line where you basically say this stuff is happening, we need to get over it, and you need to be a better, more intelligent individual and not just buy into everything that's being thrown at you?
So I'm not sure if I've covered this on this podcast before. I know I've talked about it elsewhere, but I really recommend the book Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday. He looks into kind of the history of fake news in journalism, and it goes back to like the 1800s, where you'd have people on the street corners, with little tabloids that are yelling, such and such scandal with the president, and they're trying to sell on a model that's like day to day. So they're putting out stuff that is extremely clickbaity, only it's, I guess it wouldn't be clickbaity, it would be read bait or something, or flip bait, flip through the newspaper bait,
attention bait.
Yeah, but then in order to counter that, because it got so bad, you read some of the articles from back then, and he has some of them in his book that they're almost indistinguishable from a BuzzFeed clickbait article. And then to kind of counter that, you had different newspapers emerge, like the New York Times, that were subscription based, so people knew that they were buying something that was more reliable, and they were willing to pay a monthly rate to get it. And now we've become so comfortable with getting our news for free that the way that these models make money is it's by generating ads that are, cost per impression or cost per click. And so they're trying to generate as many ads as possible just by getting quick views on their site. So even if their title is misleading, then people are clicking on it just for the headline. And we have to be comfortable with actually, accepting the fact that if we want good quality news where people actually hire journalists that go out and do investigative journalism and really in-depth reports, we have to be willing to pay for it. And we have to be willing to read past the headline and not just get a quick little dopamine rush from seeing something exciting that agrees with our preconceived conceptions about someone.
I think that is such an important point, actually. One of the reasons that we can do what we're doing is that we have patronage. And that means that we're not relying on the ads. If I had to rely on ads, my content would have to change, which means I just wouldn't do what I'm doing because I wouldn't be interested. Whereas I can see other content creators must do that because they must be able to only take on topics where they can actually monetize their content. The same is true of certain newspapers. If certain advertisers won't want to associate with them if they're pumping a narrative that might not agree with them. Whereas if it's paid for, you might get exactly what you're looking for. I understand there's a flip side to that as well. But when I'm thinking about news sites that I use, references that I use, Wikipedia is huge. I think I would defend Wikipedia and might one day in the future create a video when I do so. I think it's a fantastic website. Yes, it's got mistakes and whatnot, but the references in it, there's hundreds compared to pretty much anything else you're going to find online, other than, say, peer-reviewed studies.
Yeah.
And
I often use
the way
Wikipedia
that they
as like the first step to finding other sources on a topic.
Yeah,
so,
it's a fantastic website.
Yeah. Like I'll start
it's actually
reading. Gone. Sorry.
In a comparison with Encyclopedia Britannica and I think World Book, they found that Wikipedia actually had less errors.
It doesn't surprise me. It's fantastic. But just to cross the T, as it were, what you were saying about how they are paid for, there's no adverts on Wikipedia. So I think it was 3 days ago, they said, clever, good advertising for them. They had a message pop up saying, we noticed that you use Wikipedia a lot. Would you be willing to donate? And it was very transparent on why. So I said, yeah, have 50 quid because I use it all the damn time.
Yeah. And they've been doing that for years. That's been their fundraising model.
Yep.
But yeah, so I started off this episode talking about how, you know, we're going to look at like the future of security and identity protection. It's kind of veered more towards fake news, and I've kind of just gone with it because I like this direction. I might retitle the episode "The Future of Fake News."
That's fine. I do have a question regarding like security stuff. If that's okay, that I was thinking about earlier.
Yeah, go for it.
So now
that we've changed the title, Rachel.
Sorry. You know how you were saying how you can get the kind of real-time fake faces of people and stuff. I was thinking how with like the iPhone X you have facial recognition to open the phone, but it requires things like not just a picture, it has to have like depth and stuff like that to it, and you have to be looking at the camera and all that sort of thing. Do you reckon there's a way that we could somehow create like a fake model to open something like an iPhone X?
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be outside the realm of possibilities. It comes down to you have, so in the field of security, there's three different ways that you can identify yourself or to gain access to something that can make it more secure. You can have there's something you know, which what would be an example of that?
Something you know? What?
Something only you know would be like a password.
Like the security questions or a password or something like that.
Yeah, so your cat's maiden's name.
Yeah, so there's something you know, something you have. So
a key.
That would be like a key.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you have those little digital access keys or something that you can use to like log into a site, and it'll give you like a one-time code or a one-time password or something that's synced with the cloud.
Yeah, Dan has one of those for work.
Something you have, and then the third one is something you are.
Like a fingerprint or a face.
Fingerprint, retina, DNA, like these are things that are kind of unique to you, but they tell you apart. Now, in almost every single case, these can be either stolen or hacked or impersonated or something. Like if it's something that you know, well, when it comes to security, the human factor is almost always one of the most vulnerable because people are just dumb. People will write passwords on the back of a Post-it note and stick it underneath their keyboard. People will use the same password over and over again. Like there's entire password tables that you can search for like online, and you can bring up a list of like the top 10,000 most commonly used passwords, and like the top 100 of them are like used by like over half of people like in the US. Like it's insane.
My favorite one for that, by the way, is people leaving a spare key under a plant pot in their garden. Come on.
Yeah. And it's one thing if someone's coming in like 2 hours or something and you need to like hide it in the backyard. It's another to just like leave it out all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, big difference.
But these are things that if the more sophisticated you are as a burglar, the harder it is for someone who's honest to not be susceptible to. The most difficult thing to steal would be something that you are. So I would have to cut off your fingers to get a fingerprint, and in some cases, you know, if you have a sophisticated scanner, it would detect like, you know, is there blood pumping through it? Is it actually like warm or live or something? Like, is there something that sets it apart? You know,
that's the thing with the iPhone fingerprint scanner, isn't it? Don't you need like there's something like the blood or it can tell that you're alive, basically.
I think they have heart rate sensors or something or they can
like that,
tell like if it's I know with the cameras sometimes like they want you to blink to be able to tell that it's not a picture.
That's
or something.
Yeah.
So there's different things that you can kind of layer on top of it to make it harder to fake. But as the technology gets better, like the possibility for faking it also gets better. So it's a constant arms race between, you know, the criminals and the hackers and the, you know, people who are honest. And I say that as someone who, when I was 17, I tried to break into my brother's computer by using a fingerprint scanner and a piece of tape.
Aww.
But
did it work?
No, but I've seen experts do it. So I thought at 17 that I could do it. No, I didn't succeed. But I can now hack into computers in much easier ways, but that's
You've been hacking into our computers. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not something that I do illegally, but I have a background in security.
I was just going to say, I have a question actually related to all of the security stuff, and that is, at what point of this podcast are you going to tell us that we've been speaking not with the real Thomas Westbrook?
That is true. We've not seen your face today.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just something that you're just going to have to accept, that I could be an avatar.
Actually, me and Steve, we've met, we've hung out. We've never met you, Thomas. What if you're not even a real person?
What about all the videos we've seen on YouTube with people we may or may not have met? Such I've met Matt Delahanty. I've seen him near you, I believe. Maybe he's in on it. Maybe you don't exist.
Ooh.
Well, but I've met Matt Delahanty too, so he could testify that I'm real.
Yeah,
and
but
it builds a chain of trust.
Yeah, of course it does. But I'm going to go full conspiracy mode and just claim that everything is conspiring to pretend that you exist, and that right now we're speaking to some high-tech computer.
But Rachel, Steve,
I promise I'm real, guys.
That was pretty good.
That was good.
In terms of protecting your identity, like, it's always going to be an arms race, but there's always going to be, or I can't say that there's always going to be, but there has continued to be ways that we can combat and that we can fight the identity thieves. Just by using some common sense practices, don't use the same passwords as everyone else, actually have something that is, use encryption when you can. Don't reuse your password, the same password everywhere. Because if someone gets access to one, then suddenly they have access to all your accounts. Things like this are common sense, but I think that we might be reaching a day where we're going to have to protect things like our DNA, like if we start using that to authenticate. Imagine if you spit on the sidewalk or something, and all of a sudden, like, an identity thief comes along 2 minutes later and scoops up a little sample of your spit and uses your DNA to hack into your bank account.
But this is why I think DNA.
Sorry,
but this
or if you shed some, you have a little scratch and you have a little bit of blood or something that falls on the ground, or you have
my hair is constantly falling out.
Your hair.
Same. Yeah. I would personally say that DNA is a bad barrier because of the things you're mentioning. One that I think's quite good, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, I haven't thought about it much, is that if I want to, say, go into any of my Google accounts, I have to know the password, so I put the password in, and then they will text me a code. If you haven't got that code, you can't get in.
Yeah.
I think that's not super, because someone could just have my phone. But you would still need my phone. It means you have to be in close proximity, etc., etc.
It's useful.
I'm pretty sure you can intercept text messages, and I don't think that they're sent through an encrypted protocol. So, for example, email is not sent through an encrypted protocol. So if you're just listening in on a network and someone's not using any kind of encryption, or they're not using a VPN, then most email is just sent in clear text, in plain text.
Would you think that Google, who gave the example of a robot essentially booking someone a haircut, do you think they probably know better and do encrypt it? Or
do encrypt what?
The codes that they send you, the texts, etc., or do you think that's just not possible and they run that risk?
Well, no, the protocol isn't encrypted, so it's not that the text messages are or aren't. It's that when you receive it, so you receive just a code in text, and it goes across your network by like T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon or whatever you have in the UK. I'm assuming you guys have phones there, so
gift
But the protocol that's used to send text messages, and one of our viewers may correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure that it's possible to listen in and to capture it, to impersonate the SIM card and stuff, and the tower that's searching for it will send it to the wrong number.
It's amazing.
And now most people don't have this kind of capability. You'd have to be pretty high tech. But at the same time, like, they would also have to be signing in to the account too with your password. They'd have to have everything else. So it'd be a pretty sophisticated attack. You know, it is always a good idea to set up 2-factor authentication, so someone can't just, get your passwords or something at a coffee shop, that you're, and another thing too is like there's certain protocols. So like if you're connecting to a website that, is completely not encrypted, if they're not using HTTPS, then you're basically sending all your passwords in the clear. If you're communicating to a website and a coffee shop and you're not using a VPN and you're not encrypting your traffic, then you're on a network where people can potentially listen into what traffic is coming and going. It's, there's different security updates that have, over the years, like when the internet first came out, things were much, much less secure, and they've become increasingly more so as we've kind of adapted and gotten used to what types of attacks and hacks people are capable of and what people do. But at the same time, like there's always vulnerabilities out there. So like the more steps that you can have in place to kind of, double verify, double check, that you are you and not just have anyone able to access it or to assume your identity, like the better, right? It's just, there's always a trade-off between convenience and security. Like if you want something to be super easy, you type in like a 4-digit code and you get access or have no password at all. Yeah, that's really convenient. Yeah. But at the same time, you're leaving yourself wide open to being, taken advantage of. And that's, I think we're going to see more and more of that in the future. Is we're going to see the trade-off between security and convenience really, really take center stage, because it's going to be a matter of someone completely assuming your identity, stealing your bank account information, with ease, as opposed to, you take some of these steps that are going to become much more natural to us, much more commonplace for how to protect who you are. So.
Yeah, for sure. Another measure that I remember actually is the location, but I assume you can override that with a VPN. So if you try to log into someone's email or whatever it might be from just 50 miles down the road, actually, some systems will have it so that it just won't let you, or even that it won't let you and it will contact the owner saying, is this you, essentially?
Yeah, well, I always get emails now, like when I log in from a new device or something, or in a new place. So
Same, yeah.
Things like, because when I was at uni, obviously I was moving around a lot. So every so often it would be like, are you in Leamington now or Oxford? And then I'd have to like go through like some security like hoops and stuff and be like, no, this was me. Don't worry, for certain accounts, because changing places all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, as someone who both travels and who uses VPNs and proxies all the time, like location isn't the best security method, because not only can that be spoofed and hacked, but at the same time, it's something that like it sucks for someone who, you change your location. You don't want to be locked out of all your devices. Yeah. But at the same time, usually you can set like your specific device as like a recognized device. Now, that's usually based off of things like your MAC address and stuff, but like that can also be spoofed. It's just a matter of like.
Do you think it's similar to stealing a physical object? So I've got a motorbike and I don't presently live in the best place, and it's been stolen once before, and this is just the way it is here until I move somewhere else. The thing is that I could buy, and I have bought, a very thick lock, and I can put that round the wheel and the chain, and it becomes a pain to take off. But the truth is that if somebody wants the bike, they're going to get the bike. And if I'm not there to capture it, if they do it at the right moment, they get it. And could this also be true of cyber hacking, of intellectual property that's in the cloud, etc.? Could it be if somebody wanted it enough and spent enough time dedicated to it, that they'd probably get it?
If they spent enough time, then I mean, it's like anything is possible. Where there's a will, there's a way. On the one hand,
because it's interesting.
At the same time, that is and that isn't true. So, for example, if you set up encryption properly, you can make it such that like it takes infinitely longer, not infinitely, I say that word lightly, but it takes astronomically longer to try to brute force attack a password that has been encrypted with a high enough bit encryption standard. So if someone is trying to guess your password and they're just guessing it again and again and again, even if they're feeding it through, you know, some of Amazon's best supercomputers in the world, and they're guessing, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions, billions, trillions, hundreds of trillions of passwords at a time, and they're going through, you know, tables of the most commonly used passwords. If you have a strong enough, long enough, heavily encrypted password, they could go potentially from now until the end of the universe and not guess your password, just because of the nature of encryption and the nature of exponential numbers.
On the number thing, by the way, that's a really interesting one. I got locked out my bank about 4 days ago, and it's because I typed in my password wrong 3 times. So I had to ring them up and fix it, which is annoying, but at the same time, that's fantastic. It means that no algorithm's going to be able to use that trick because it's probably very effective. It's just you mess it up 3 times. So if you mess it up 3 times, if you do it from a location that it's not used to, that's just 2 things, and then it's just you need text verification. Like those 3 measures are pretty solid.
Let's say that they were to get a hold of the bank's database. Right. Well, if they have access to the bank's database, then there's an entire new set of problems. But let's say that they were able to get everything that the bank has stored on file for you and your password information. If the bank is storing your passwords on their end in clear text, they're freaking idiots. Like, they have the worst security mechanisms imaginable. Usually when a site is implementing security properly, what they're doing is they're running the password through a one-way hash, and they're storing that hash on their end, usually they're salting it. And I'm not going to go super technical, but basically they're storing an encrypted version of a password on their side that it runs it through a one-way encryption process, or a one-way process that basically gives out a string of like numbers and letters that is pretty much irreversible, and only one possible input is going to give them that output. So if I come and I enter in my password, they'll run it through the same hash, and they'll check to see if both outputs are the same, and then they'll grant me access. But they're not storing the actual passwords on their end. So if you have a company that you sign up for and they send you your password in plain text in the email and don't ask you to immediately change it, but like every time you reset it, they have your actual password that you entered, you know it's not secure, because all that a hacker has to do is go in and if they gain access to their databases, then they have everyone's passwords in plain text. They don't just have a hash. Now, if they have the hash of that password, they could potentially try different combinations on their end without having to try on the website. They could try a ton of different common password combinations through the same hashing algorithm to try to see if they end up with the same hash to figure out what your passwords are. And there's entire, lookup tables and stuff that you can get access to. I feel like I'm probably going too technical on this.
No, that's interesting.
But no, it's very interesting. And I have you've made me think of something that you might find quite interesting. And that is that one of my bank accounts had some kind of breach, or they did some kind of mistake where some of my information was given away along with a lot of other people. And so they had a protocol where if there was any detection of fraud, they just end the card and they will contact me and send me a new one. So I tried to purchase something in Australia, and I immediately got a phone call from someone, like within about 3 seconds. And it was someone saying that your card has been terminated, essentially, because
that sucks so much while you're traveling.
Yeah, it was really annoying. So I had to wait for a card to be sent.
Be screwed.
Yeah, well, luckily I was okay, but I had to wait for a card to be sent. But you're right, I could have been utterly screwed. And I was like, Jesus. But then again,
been times when I've been traveling and like my debit card, because I don't carry a lot of cash on me when I travel. I just go to the ATM.
Yeah.
And if you don't have another debit card from another bank, that could be ruinous.
Yeah, it took 4 days to get another card. I couldn't access any of my account until then. Luckily, I have several accounts, but one, I'm happy because they acknowledge that's a big problem and that they have to have that protocol. But two, why is my information leaked in the first place? Why is it somewhere where you have to have this protocol? But it's interesting stuff for sure. It's just so complicated.
Well, and it comes down to the the math behind it works. The math behind the encryption is solid. That's if it didn't, the entire backbone of online commerce and retail and shopping and encryption and banking, it would completely crumble overnight. Like, we would not be able to have any of this because just everything would be susceptible to hacking. The math behind it works. The problem is the human factor. The problem is the implementation. And so many, just cheap cut rate developers who don't know how to implement security properly are putting out software that it works, but it's insecure. And so they'll do this trade-off between convenience on their end programming up front versus security of the user's data. And so, in order to have security with something like a bank, you want to go with a bank that's been around a little while, that is reputable, reliable, that takes security seriously and knows what they're doing, as opposed to, some startup cheap just got started and, Yeah.
That's what surprised me. It was a major bank. It's been around for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, and my guess is that I don't know what all was leaked, but I would be very surprised if a major bank was just storing passwords in clear text or something. Like they probably had security methods in place, but they may have had a small amount of minor information leaked. But yeah, I'm also I don't know what you guys have in the UK. Do you guys have like a social security card or social security number that you use for checking your credit checks and stuff, for opening bank accounts, for getting jobs, or what do you guys have?
A national insurance number, maybe. Is that it, Steve?
No, I think I haven't ever. I don't like the idea of finance or anything like that at all. So I've never went in and done it. So I think what you're getting from me and Rachel is we don't know.
You've never had a job?
Well,
yeah,
we certainly didn't need it for a job.
I needed my national insurance number.
Yeah. National insurance for sure, but
yeah.
So in the US, we have one number that is, and it's freaking insane the way that they have this system set up. But it's been around since before the days of the internet. And basically, you have one number that is given to you for life, and you can use this number to open bank accounts, to run credit checks, to get jobs. And if someone steals your social security number and a credit card number or something, they can potentially steal your entire identity and set up new accounts in your name, run up massive amounts of debt, commit crimes.
We have the same. Yeah, that sounds exactly as Rachel was saying. It's a national insurance number.
Okay. So something like this, my hopes for the future are that as technology becomes more widespread and more prevalent, and as we see just the scale and the number of identity theft cases just skyrocketing, that, because over the course of your life, it's going to be very unlikely that you won't have your social security number stolen, just because you apply to a bunch of different jobs. They just keep it on their computers. Medical institutions are one of the worst. Hospitals have notoriously horrific standards for security. Oftentimes they're running all their software and programs on outdated versions of unupdated Windows that are connected to the internet. They'll leave their workstations completely unlocked, and they'll just go and they have people's social security numbers pulled up in a spreadsheet that's saved in Excel.
Isn't that what identity thieves would want? People that potentially were on their deathbed or that had problems, etc. That's
actually a really good point.
Not necessarily, because if you go and if this person's pronounced dead and they have a death certificate and stuff, and then you're pretending to be them, you could get caught. It could get flagged. So
I guess so, yeah.
But stuff like this is over the course of your lifetime, it's very unlikely that you won't have, even if you're extremely cautious, extremely careful with who you give this number to. I was working at Texas A&M, and I worked in security. I was a security administrator. We never had a breach that we were responsible for, but there was one case where there was a graduate student in another department who he got a list of data of staff and faculty data that they were using for some type of research or for something, and apparently they somehow got a list of social security numbers, and they were authorized to have access to it because they'll use some of this information for calculating different things, and they just stored it on their computer, and it was a publicly accessible drive that they stored it in. Wow. And so it's like, even if all your security is done properly, even if everything is in place that needs to be, if there's a few people, there's always the human factor where people are idiots. And so, as a result, I don't think that that it did get into the wrong hands. I don't think that it did end up in the hands of some malicious hacker, but we got like 3 years of identity theft protection where there's services that will go and check and see if like anyone has opened a bank account in your name or something. So these services are going to become increasingly more common until we actually have better ways of determining someone's identity and tracking that are much more higher security, that incorporate some of the aspects of security, like something you are, something you know, something you have, rather than just one number for life.
Yeah.
But the world is changing.
Yeah.
It's changing very rapidly, and we have to change too to keep up.
Yes, that's true.
And on that note, I will probably wrap up unless you guys have anything else to contribute.
No.
No,
Good
I
episode.
think so. That was really interesting. I feel like I
Not
was
too,
just a lot
not
of
too technical.
No, I really enjoyed it. I feel like I was kind of just listening a lot at the end there, but I really enjoyed hearing it. It was good.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's been a while since I worked in this field, but I'm not sure how technical our listeners are, or like how much of this stuff is common knowledge versus like, you need a bit of a background in IT or in computer science to kind of get a little bit of the gist of it, but
And I think you explained it in a pretty easy to understand way.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, cool. Well, I think Steve or Rachel, which one of you guys are leading the next one?
It'll be me.
I think, yeah.
And do you know your topic yet?
I have about 5 in mind, but I haven't solidified.
So join us in 2 weeks from now when Steve will be covering 5 topics in one episode.
Can we call the episode? Can we call the episode something like "How many topics can we cover in one episode?"
Okay.
And then we just try and smush them in.
I'll tell you what, we kind of did that with our first episode. That was a mammoth
that was
of an episode.
A big boy.
Yeah.
Well, we've cut our time down from like an hour and a half an episode to like 45 minutes to an hour. So
we're doing good.
We'll have to cover like a topic every 5 minutes and just power through it.
Exactly.
But then we'll run out of topics.
Yeah. So anyways. Keep them per episode. Yeah.
Well, we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you later.
This has been an absolute blast, and now we want you to join in the conversation over on the Here and How Facebook and Twitter pages, or follow us on Pinterest and Instagram if you just want some of the dankest of sciencey memes. If you like one of our particular styles, check out each of our YouTube channels: Rachel Oates, Rationality Rules by Stephen Woodford, and Holy Kool-Aid by me, Thomas Westbrook. To find all of our episodes, show notes, contact information, and more, warp on over to our home base, thehereandhow.com. If you enjoyed this episode and want us to succeed in spreading the love of science, you can help us out by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher. And to all our friends and family listening, thank you for spending this episode with us. We'll be back to explore another exciting big idea next week. Now go create something magnificent.